Well, welcome to our November edition of Let's Get Growing. And landscapes are really picking up at this time of year. We need to be doing so much in the landscape, so let's get growing. In November, we're going to want to mow regularly. It's not necessarily once a week, but when we're not exceeding that 1/3 removal every time we mow. And remember, don't bag it, add it to the compost pile. Remember, October, you planted a lot of new items and probably are still going to be planting, but remember, those dry areas still need to be watered. And hand watering is not always effective because we need to put out at least 1 inch to make sure that we're penetrating the mulch we put down that will keep those beds warm in the winter and cool during the summer. It's very important to also keep those weeds down. So water regularly those dry areas. Now remember, you're going to want to weekly remove those dead leaves and remove any dead or diseased wood on your trees. We're going to hold off just a little bit longer on that major pruning of our trees because of the insects still being active. And remember, add those dead leaves to the compost pile. They're an important nutrient. Now, I was asking you to hold back on that pruning, and that's only because I mentioned that first major freeze. And after we've had that first major freeze, do your major pruning. But remember, if you need to get off of the ground to make a cut, you need a professional. Be sure to hire a certified arborist, and they will be listed with the International Society of Arboriculture. So do your research and make sure you're taking care of your trees because they take care of you. One well-planted tree can increase your property value by 20%. And it will also increase the value of the homes around you. November is a great time to be planting cool season annuals, perennials, trees, shrubs for not only replacements but to add to the landscape. It's going to increase the value of your property as we mentioned before, but everything's on sale. And contrary to popular belief, roots do grow during the winter because your ground temperature is pretty constant. So you put out roots before they have to put out all that energy in the spring to put out new foliage. So put those roots down and then you'll be ready to get growing. Well, we planted all those cool season pansies and kale and cabbage and other annuals, so let's make sure that we're fertilizing them. This is going to be the time that we want to fertilize after you've seen new growth on those annuals and cabbage that you've planted, and make sure that you distribute it evenly and water it in well. Well, don't forget to feed the birds in November because we're going to need those little babies to help us keep the insects down in the spring. So if you put seed out for the birds, they're going to remember to come back and visit you in the spring. This is what we call a sansevieria, or mother-in-law's tongue, and you can see this one is variegated. Now on most sansevieria, we can make leaf cuttings by taking the leaf like this, let it lay out for a couple of days so that it hardens over like this, and then you would take it and simply add some soil to a container. Okay, so we're going to wait until this end has dried. I don't have time for that during this demo, so we're just going to take it and plant it. And all you do is take the cutting, make sure you keep the top up and the bottom down, and put it in the soil, make sure it's firm, and you're planted. But remember that this is variegated. It'll come back solid green. In order for it to be variegated like this one, we're going to need to separate. And so that's our next step, is for me to show you how to separate a sansevieria. So it's very easy to separate this sansevieria so that we can maintain the variegation. And all we're going to do is remove it from the container. And you can see that it's already started to root fairly well. And so we're going to take it, knock the existing soil off, And you can see this one just literally separated on its own. But you can see right here, this little white is where it disconnected itself from the mother plant. And so we have this little baby on this side. So watch carefully as we separate. So now we've gone from one mother plant and 2 pups to 3 viable plants. And so let's plant these up. Over here we have a nice potting mixture, loose and fairly moist. And so we're going to fill it up, and let's start with the mother, or our stock plant. And see how I'm holding it between my fingers so that I can maintain the original soil level. And then I'm just going to add soil all the way around. And then firm it. The most important thing when you're repotting is to make sure that these little babies are firm, not packed or crammed, but firm in the pot. You need to leave a little lip around the edge so that you can water it and make sure that it's not running out of the container. If we fill it up and to the top, then we know we've given enough moisture to this plant.
So
here we have one of the babies, and we start out by adding a little potting material to the bottom. And as you can see, let's start over. This container has many holes in it because the Sansevieria is a succulent, meaning that it doesn't need a lot of water. The second thing is it'll take the reduced light in the house. We'll want to give it a little bit more light when they're first growing, like a south window during the middle of the winter. And we add our soil going around and make sure that we're getting those roots nice and evenly packed. Firm it. We don't want the soil in the crown. Kind of dump that out. And once again, just like as on the mother, we're leaving a little lip because we know that this soil is going to settle, but we're going to fill it nicely, leaving a lip so that we can water it correctly. And it's important that after we've planted that we water. So we still have one more to go. And fill it once again. And then see how the roots are evenly distributed? We want to make sure that we're leaving them as they were originally coming off the plant. Circle as we put our soil in. Kind of clean it out of the crown. Firm it. Make sure you pull it up. We don't want it too deep in the soil. We want to maintain that original soil level. Firming, but not packing too tightly. Don't press too hard. See, I'm just making sure that it doesn't shake when I move the pot. All right? Take the soil out of the crown. And there we have the baby planted. This is another Sansevieria. So we've gone from 1 to 3. That's our November edition of Let's Get Growing. Plenty things to do. Remember, after the first freeze, we can start that major pruning of our trees. But until then, just our dead and diseased wood. And don't get off the ground. Call a professional.